Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are tackling a substance that has become, it's the universal villain of the modern diet.
Oh, absolutely. The public enemy number one of heart health.
Right. If you ask anyone, in a clinical setting, what you should cut out for better health, 9 times out of 10, they'll say salt.
And that deeply held belief, which is reinforced by pretty much every major nutritional guideline out there, is exactly what we need to put under the microscope today.
So what's our mission here?
Well, our mission is to really examine the scientific evidence. What does sodium actually do? Why is it essential for, everything from your muscles to your neurons? And what's the actual documented impact of following a low-sodium diet?
Separating the evidence from the narrative.
Exactly. What does the evidence say versus what we hear all the time?
To really get this, I think we have to start with the history. Because the historical context here is, honestly, it's staggering. Especially when you see how we view salt now.
It really is. We're talking about a substance that literally underpinned human wealth and power for centuries.
It was currency.
It was more valuable than gold in some places.
Right.
I mean, just look at the word salary.
Right.
That comes directly from the Roman soldiers getting their salarium, their pay in salt.
And in ancient Greece, there are records of slaves being exchanged for salt. And here's the kicker.
Yeah.
People back then consumed vastly more salt than we do today.
Oh, orders of magnitude more. Think about 16th century Europe before refrigeration. Everything was preserved in salt.
Salted fish, cured meats.
Right. So the average consumption could easily be 10 times what modern guidelines recommend. Even more recently, like between the two world wars, it was still common for people to eat well over 10 grams of sodium a day.
That is just a staggering amount. And it brings us straight to the core of this deep dive.
The modern paradox.
Exactly. We are told constantly that high sodium causes hypertension.
Right.
Yet today, we have 3 times more people with hypertension than we did years ago, even though our average sodium consumption is way, way lower than those historical highs.
And even just looking at the last few decades, our average sodium intake has been pretty steady, but hypertension rates just keep climbing.
So if salt is the main driver, that just doesn't add up.
The trend is going in the completely opposite direction. It's a huge question mark.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the basics of why we need it at all. Sodium is an electrolyte.
Right, along with things like chlorine, potassium, magnesium, calcium. We hear that word all the time.
We do, especially with sports drinks, but what are they actually doing?
They're basically the building blocks of your body's electrical system. They provide the electrical charge to all your cells.
So they create a difference in charge.
Exactly, a difference in electrical potential inside and outside the cell. Your whole body is fundamentally electrical, and it needs this charge, this potential, to function. Is how your cells talk to each other.
So depriving your body of these minerals.
It can be so disruptive to that equilibrium that it's often more severe and generates more contradictory effects than having too much.
And that leads us right into the physiological paradox here. We're told excess sodium equals hypertension.
But the body has this powerful compensatory mechanism when sodium is restricted.
Let's talk about the kidneys, because this is where it gets really counterintuitive.
Okay, so when you dramatically cut your sodium, the sodium level in your blood drops. Your body reads this as volume loss. It thinks you're dehydrated.
Oh, it panics.
It panics. The kidneys, which regulate your blood pressure, perceive this as an emergency.
And what do?
They release a powerful substance called renin, and that's the first domino.
Renin. What does that set off?
It activates something called the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone axis, or RAAS for short.
That sounds complicated. In simple terms, what does RAAS do?
Think of it as your body's emergency pressure system. When it's activated, it constricts your blood vessels, making the pipes narrower, and tells your body to hold on to every last drop of sodium and water it can find.
And the whole point of that is?
To increase arterial pressure, to raise your blood pressure.
That's fascinating. So the body's natural response to low sodium is to raise your blood pressure.
Exactly. The outcome is often paradoxical. Sodium restriction can trigger the very system it was meant to prevent.
Because the body is fighting back to maintain what it thinks is the right fluid balance.
Right. So the problem isn't just the one nutrient, it's the lack of equilibrium.
So if the body is fighting for balance, what's the real deficit we should be looking at?
The key with all minerals is that equilibrium. And if you look at studies on nutritional deficits, especially inside the cells, what you see overwhelmingly is a deficiency in potassium.
Potassium, not sodium.
Potassium. The studies show a clear inverse relationship. The more potassium you eat, the lower your incidence of hypertension.
And historically.
It gets really interesting. Our Paleolithic ancestors ate about 7 times more potassium than we do today. So the real problem might not be too much sodium, but a catastrophic deficit of potassium relative to our sodium.
Which makes the mechanics inside the cell even more critical. We have to talk about the sodium-potassium pump.
The unsung hero of all of this. It's in every single one of your cells, your muscles, your brain, everywhere.
And it's not a passive thing, right?
Not at all. It's an active, energy-guzzling process. It can use up to 40% of a neuron's total energy. It's like the battery charger for your cell.
So how does this battery charger work?
It's constantly working to pump 3 sodium molecules out of the cell while it lets 2 potassium molecules in.
3 out, 2 ins? Why that specific ratio?
That difference is everything. By moving 3 positive charges out but only 2 in, the inside of the cell becomes more negatively charged than the outside.
And that buildup of charge is what readies the cell to fire.
That's it. That's depolarization. If that pump isn't working right because you're deficient in minerals, your cells can't communicate properly.
This really puts the whole electrical nature of our bodies into perspective. If we connect this back, this idea that high sodium is always the enemy, it needs a serious rethink.
Well, look at entire populations that seem to break the rules, like the Korean paradox.
Tell us about that.
South Korea, as a population, eats a ton of salt. On average, more than double what the WHO recommends.
Double. So you'd expect their cardiovascular disease rates would be through the roof?
You would, but they're not. The country actually has some of the lowest rates of hypertension and heart disease in the world.
So what's going on? Is it not the sodium, but the source of the sodium?
Precisely. It's all about diet quality. Their sodium isn't coming from ultra-processed foods. It's from things like kimchi, fermented soybean paste, sea salt.
All part of a diet that's also rich in other things.
Exactly. A diet full of fermented foods, seaweed, vegetables, fish. So it's incredibly high in potassium, fiber, omega-3s, all the good stuff.
Okay, but what about within Korea? If you compare the highest salt eaters to the lowest.
This is the most shocking part. Even within that high sodium population, the individuals with the highest sodium intake had the least hypertension, the least coronary disease, the fewest heart attacks.
That completely flips the script.
It does. It suggests that in a nutrient-dense diet, high sodium might even be protective.
And we see this elsewhere, too. The sources point out that all the blue zones, those places with incredible longevity,
Sardinia, Okinawa.
they all have sodium intakes that are higher than the global average and higher than what's recommended.
It raises a vital question. What is sodium actually doing beyond just fluid balance? What are we underestimating?
Like its role in thyroid function. I think this will surprise a lot of people.
It's absolutely necessary for making thyroid hormones T3 and T4.
Most people just think of iodine for the thyroid.
Iodine is essential, yes, but sodium is the transport agent. To get 1 molecule of iodine into the thyroid gland,
You need sodium.
you need 2 molecules of sodium to carry it in. If you don't have enough sodium, the iodine can't get into the gland. No iodine uptake, no thyroid hormones.
Wow. I have never heard that before. And beyond the thyroid, what are some other key roles?
Well, one surprising one is stress. The body interprets any major mineral disruption as a stressor, and sodium has been shown to help lower inflammation, and notably, to help control cortisol levels.
That makes sense. If your body is always in that RAAS emergency mode, that has to be stressful.
It is. Then there's bone health. We always
Yeah.
think calcium, but sodium is needed for strong bones. It's also essential for increasing blood volume, which is crucial for people with poor circulation.
But maybe the most critical and least discussed role is in the brain.
It is absolutely central to cognitive function. Remember that sodium-potassium pump. It's working overtime in your neurons.
For thinking, for memory.
Yes. When you're concentrating hard, the branches of your neurons, the dendrites, get flooded with sodium to prepare to fire. If you have a deficit, brain function gets worse. Period.
And there's a connection to neurodegenerative diseases, isn't there?
A very strong one. Diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's are often linked to damage in those very same sodium-potassium pumps in the brain. If you can't maintain that charge, the brain can't communicate.
So let's bring this all back to the official guidelines. If the benefits are this broad, we have to look really critically at the data that started this whole low-sodium push.
The source material points to major studies, like those in the American and New England Journal of Medicine, including the massive PRE study, which followed hundreds of thousands of people for over a decade.
And what did these huge long-term studies find for healthy people?
Something remarkable. For healthy individuals, people without existing hypertension or kidney disease, Cardiovascular risk was actually lower the more sodium they consumed, as long as it stayed below about 7 grams a day.
7 grams, that's what, 3 times the typical recommendation?
Exactly. And the risk got even more alarming on the other side. They found that cardiovascular risk went up faster and was greater for people following a low-sodium diet, the kind governments recommend, than for people moderately exceeding the limits.
That just turns the whole risk calculation on its head. It suggests undershooting might be more dangerous than overshooting.
It does. And if you just calculate the body's basic physiological need, what you need for your thyroid, your brain, all of it, the math works out to about 65 milligrams of sodium per kilogram of body weight.
So for an average person,
For an average 75-kilogram person, that's over 4 grams of sodium a day.
almost double the recommendation.
And that's just to maintain function, before you even factor in exercise or sweating.
Now, to be fair, low sodium diets can lower blood pressure in
Yeah.
some people, right?
They can, but the effect is often very small, just a few points. And crucially, these large government-funded studies found very little evidence of any real long-term benefit for otherwise healthy people.
Because hypertension is just so much more complex than one mineral.
It's completely multifactorial. We should be looking at chronic inflammation, stress, a sedentary lifestyle, poor tissue oxygenation. Sodium is just one tiny piece of a giant puzzle.
So for a listener who's concerned about all this, what's the takeaway? Do they just start adding salt to everything?
Not necessarily. The first step is to focus on those root causes. Lower your stress, get more physical activity, address inflammation, and critically, if you're worried about your sodium, focus on dramatically increasing your potassium.
From whole foods.
From fruits, vegetables, whole foods. Achieve that vital sodium to potassium balance. That's the real actionable step.
That is the perfect synthesis. So we have two core takeaways here. First, we just fundamentally underestimate how important minerals are for the body's electrical charge.
Your cells literally can't work without that precise, energy-intensive sodium-potassium balance.
And two, health guidelines are not set in stone, they change.
The scientific pendulum always swings. We should fully expect salt recommendations to change in the coming years, just like we saw happen with cholesterol.
An excellent point. Before we wrap, leave us with one final thought to mull over.
Okay, given how absolutely vital this sodium-potassium balance is for maintaining your body's basic electrical charge, its fundamental power source, what other seemingly harmless dietary restrictions, maybe related to other minerals like magnesium or zinc, might be unknowingly messing with our fundamental electrical biology in ways we don't yet fully recognize? Something to think about until the next deep dive.